Do I contradict myself? Very well then. I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. I've probably quoted that on this podcast, this line, one of my favorites by Walt Whitman, probably 3 times at least now, and I don't care. It's so important. We don't have to choose one version of ourselves and then freeze there. We don't have to flatten ourselves out and our complexity just to make other people feel more comfortable. And today we are going to explore how to live, really live, as a walking contradiction, maybe even on purpose. The kind of stuff that creates art and softness and rebellion and truth all at once. So hello, my merriment makers, and welcome to another episode of the Merriment Making Podcast. I am Mary Uncustomary England, your joy strategist and contradiction celebrator today. We are talking about what it means to hold opposing desires without needing to pick sides. To be soft and strong, to want to be held and also want to run the show, and to be a dreamer and a disaster, a leader and a little kid. This episode is for you if you've ever wondered, can I really be both things? Is it wrong? And the answer is no, it's not wrong. And yeah, you can be both. So today I'm going to show you how. Today we're going to look at 6 powerful polarities that shape the human condition. And these are tensions that kind of show up throughout lots of different theologies. They are known as the human paradoxes. They show up in astrology and depth psychology and existential philosophy. They show up in everyday internal tug of wars in your mind. And as we walk through each pair, I'm going to give you a way to recognize this paradox in your own life, a historical or modern figure that really does a good job, I think, of embodying this contradiction, a practice or prompt that you can use to try to practice embodying both sides of this, and a little reflection from me. I think this is one of the most spiritually liberating things that we can look at, the practice of embracing a contradiction. Because for me, and maybe for you too, self-help sometimes feels like a contradiction. Be your best self, but love yourself exactly as you are. Improve, but don't hustle. Accept, but never settle. It's a maze, right? A new religion of optimization dressed up as self-care. And I think that the reason that this maze is so tricky is because we're trying to logic our way into emotional peace. We want to solve ourselves, but you're not a problem to solve. You are a poem, you are a riddle, you are a freeze and a burn. And I want to tell you something personal. I think about this all the time. I want to be famous. I want to be adored. I want freedom. I want wealth. And I also someone to take care of me. I want someone to pick me up and carry me away and say, I got this today. I want to be a soft, glowy bimbo sometimes, like a bimbo housewife. Sometimes I look at the Sopranos housewives or I've never even watched that show, but the Real Housewives or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that looks so nice. Just have everything taken care of and just have an art as a hobby and an excessive allowance. I want to inspire people. I want to take pretty photos. I want to make messy scrapbooks and leave glitter in public restrooms. And I also want to be owned and claimed and devoured by someone who sees my brilliance and my beauty and still want more. I want to work hard, and I also don't want to have to hustle. I want freedom, but I don't want to be pressured. I want to build something that changes lives, but I also want to disappear sometimes. And I used to think that made me a hypocrite, but now I just think it makes me honest. There's a reason that I don't trust self-proclaimed experts. I trust the people who say, I don't know for sure, but here's what I found. I trust people who say this is complicated and it insists on being complicated. That's why I like science over being 100% faith in a specific religion. I trust agnosticism. The thing about this is it goes along with identity too. I think that identity insists on complication. I think it insists on being messy. So today I want you to I want to invite you maybe to lay down the sword that you've been swinging at yourself. The one that says pick a lane and you can't want both. It's wrong or dishonest to want both, and that's saying you should have this all figured out by now. So lay it down with me and let's take a look at these 6 human polarities. Next up is autonomy versus connection. So this is basically the feeling of I want to be free, but I also want to be deeply loved. So you'll see this show up in relationships a lot, right? Where you want to have your freedom, but you also want to be in relationship. It's the tension between needing personal space and also craving deep intimacy. I think a really good real life example of this is Frida Kahlo. She was fiercely independent, politically outspoken, and creatively autonomous, yet she was like deeply entangled in a very complex, lifelong love with Diego Rivera. And she wanted to belong and be free. And I personally feel this every time I crave solitude and check my texts. You know, I am in a relationship now where I don't know, I think I used to really want to be with someone that looked at me as an object because, I mean, honestly, the sex is better that way. Truly, when you have a passionate relationship that's like running on fire and passion. And at the end of the day, like those people have always, in my personal experience, ended up looking at everyone as an object and then they're not faithful. And I find so much more peace in love when it's like a friendship almost. And it doesn't mean that there's not passion there. It's just different. There's so many different kind of examples of quotes and things that say, you know, love is when your nervous system settles and passion is when you're kind of like really, like it's all like lit up and stuff. And it's so interesting and different and you kind of won't really know until you experience it. But in my relationship, really do want to have time with him and be with him and have connection and physical touch and intimacy and solo time with him, right? But I also really need solo time with myself. And I also really, as mostly an extrovert at the end of the day, need experiences that he doesn't even need to have. He would really prefer to not have. So I love that he really allows me to have autonomy and to go do the things that I want to do and is not jealous in any way and trusts me and lets me go and do that thing. I don't think that a romantic relationship is the only example of autonomy versus connection, but I think that it's a really good physical kind of tangible, easy one to get there. So you could maybe try taking yourself on a solo date and then asking your close friend to pick the outfit for you or the activity or something. You could write yourself a letter from, you could think about your independent self versus your attached self and see what they would say to each other. We could also break this down into further parts work and we could look at an inner child practice. You could create a fort and invite yourself inside the fort. You could have a caregiver practice, like, you know, this kind of like responsible part of you that maybe has to do all of these different things and you could let someone else make the plan for you. You could also look at maybe as a rebel or an artist version of you. You could practice this autonomy versus connection by practicing saying, I love you and I need space in the same breath. So let's take this framework and let's move forward and let's apply it to all the other ones. Is there anything else I want to say on autonomy versus connection? I think really it's just, all of this is about embracing contradiction and allowing ourselves to have both. So when we want to be free, but also want to be deeply loved, let yourself understand that there is a natural understanding, a natural want and need and craving for both. When people talk about polyamory, the idea of like, you can't really get all the things from one person. I think that that is true. I don't necessarily think that everybody needs to be polyamorous or ethically non-monogamous. I do think that that application does apply. If you kind of think about the fact that you can't really get all the same things that you need in your life from one person, no matter what, you are going to need to outsource the parts of you to different aspects, different activities, different environments. And if there's something in your life, in your house, in your relationship, in your friendship, in your job, whatever, that isn't being met, then you do need to kind of carve out time to make sure that that's being met. And maybe it's actually that you are having too much freedom and you're actually like isolating the connection aspect of it. So figure out where do you feel that the balance isn't being met and then take the steps to create the scheduling time to do that. So I think really as we move forward, kind of look at all of this as which part isn't really feeling the need being met, and then how can you isolate that? And then looking at all these examples that I'm giving, looking at it from like, is it maybe the inner child that wants something? Is it the adult responsible part that wants something? Is it the artist rebel in you that wants something? And then you got to put it on your calendar too. So all of this stuff, it's all just, you know, theory until it becomes tangible. You got to put it on the schedule. So let's move on to the next one, which is stability versus change. So this is saying like, I want security and I also want everything to be different. So this shows up in our longing for safety, but also for reinvention. So we need novelty in our life, right? We need these like dopamine hits. We need things to be unique. We need things to be novel, but we also need to know like where our next meal is coming from. We need to know where we're going to be sleeping. We need to know that like our basic needs at the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs are going to be met. And we can have different seasons of all of these things, right? All 6 of these different paradoxes, we can have different seasons where we like really lean into our freedom, where we really lean into novelty, where we really lean into one side or the other. And sometimes when we notice that something is off kilter, we will overcorrect the balance of it. I see that a lot with boundaries in general, with women specifically, where they realize like, oh, I've been a people pleaser for so long, and now I'm realizing that I can create boundaries, and then they just go over the other side, and then they will just overinstate everything and kind of create a really deep moat around themselves like a castle, and they're like, no one's getting in. I'm going to kind of be even mean to everybody and say no to everything. So that's not really what we want to do. We don't necessarily need to overcorrect, but we can start to look in a, I don't want to say healthy way, but just be curious about it. Be interested. A more classic example is your 20s are like a time where you're really curious about change. You're really interested in novelty. You're really maybe backpacking or trying different things, experimenting. And then in your 30s, you start to crave stability and security. And that's not the truth for everyone. Sometimes it flip-flops, but you'll notice that there's like almost decades of time where you will kind of switch, from one side to the other. I think that if you notice, I can actually have a little bit of both. I can figure out like, what is it that I am wanting that is secure? What is it that I really need in order to feel safe for me? And it also changes again in your life, in your seasons. What is it that you need to feel secure and safe is going to be different for you at 30 versus 40 versus 50 versus 80. My dad right now needs one of those life support necklaces. That's not something I need right now. What is it that you need to make sure that you feel safe? Is it a working phone, Wi-Fi? Is it having good locks in your neighborhood? Is it just making sure that your fridge is full, that you have access to health insurance or medicine? What are those specific things that you need to feel safe, and how can you implement those things? And if there's something missing, how can you schedule it and do all the steps to implement it? And then if you're feeling like novelty is missing, the change aspect, the reinvention aspect, what can you do to create disruption? So I think you'll notice as we go through these, which side of the pendulum I swing on and kind of teach towards as my personal side. So far on the autonomy versus connection, I probably teach more towards the autonomy side. I'm teaching you how to practice self-love. I'm teaching you how to go on solo dates. I'm not necessarily the guru, so to speak, on connection. I don't have as many classes on relationships and romantic entanglements and things like that. I do have practices on how to reach out and become friends and how to connect and spread joy, but that's like my side of the pendulum is more geared towards my value, which is autonomy, because if I have to pick one, that's the side that I'm choosing. And if we're looking at this one that we're talking about right now, stability versus change, I will value change every time as it is right now. Let's look at a real life example. Prince. Prince was an artist who built an empire on disruption and creativity, and he also really fiercely protected his inner circle and his boundaries and his rituals. They were all very sacred to him. So I think that he's a really good example of somebody that did both. And for me, I can move every year and redecorate weekly, but I still cling to the things that are really important to me. I have nostalgia boxes. I have the things that make me feel like I'm safe. Like if I need to travel, I will take my stuffed animal duck with me. There are specific things that I need to feel safe. You'll notice that within my teachings, I am here to kind of help you create disruption a little bit more than how to necessarily teach you the practices for stability, because honestly, I do think that it's what I'm naturally good at. I think there's a lot more classes on how to find a partner, how to make friends, how to like establish relationships and things like that. And I think there's a lot more classes, and I think there's a lot more classes and resources on maintaining stability, finances, and houses. And it's not that they're necessarily boring to me. As I get older, I value them more, but I don't see as many interesting resources about novelty, about disruption. And I want to be able to grant you those things. So maybe something that you could do is to do one thing that's the same every day for a week, like having a ritual, having happiness habits. And actually, that's actually a really good example of stability, happiness habits, having a morning and evening routine, whether it's like writing in a journal or doing tapping or, I don't know, stretching, something that's kind of like grounding you. And then after you do that same thing every day for a week, intentionally break the pattern and see what it feels like. If you want to look at it from the inner child angle, you could rearrange your bedroom like it's a new adventure zone. If you want to look at it from the adult responsibility caregiver angle, you could create a new soothing bedtime routine. And if you want to look at it from the rebel artist creative part of you, you could throw something away that really used to define you, maybe you've been holding on to for a long time. All right, the third one is individuality versus belonging. So this is the paradox of I want to stand out and I want to fit in. This is the need to be you, but not be exiled in the process. There is so much interesting information about how as creatures that came from tribes, we don't want to stand out too much because then we're going to be removed from the pack, essentially. We're going to be pointed at, we're going to be laughed at because when something's different, we notice it. But there's also a value of wanting to be special. We do want to have something unique about us. Our ego comes on when we're like about 6 years old and we start to develop things that are special to us, unique to us. And this is also culturally different. There are some cultures that really don't value individuality, or maybe you are feeling like you really want to express your individuality, but you're living in a culture that is really suppressing it. If you can guess which side of the spectrum that I'm going to follow along here, I'm going to go towards the side of individuality. I want you to feel like you. I want you to be able to feel like you can stand out because I think there's plenty of resources that are telling you how to fit in. And I don't want to ever suppress the need to be stable or to find connection or to want to fit in. That's not what I'm here to do, but I am here to help guide you if you are longing to figure out how to stand out, how to embrace your weird, and how to feel like you can become more you and not fear consequence, I guess, of being exiled from the tribe in the process. I think a really interesting real life example is Lady Gaga. She is an icon of having her freak flag fly through individuality and has built her career around creating a community of belonging for weirdos, her little monsters, the others, right? And so many people will come up to her and say like, you have made me feel like I matter. I'm obsessed with her personally. I personally have made a whole brand around my own eccentricity, and yet I still do ache for people to get me. It's something that I think everybody struggles with, not wanting to be misunderstood, not wanting to be misinterpreted, and wanting to be accepted. But you can do both. You can do both. So something you might want to try is wearing something that's really you, something that maybe you have wanted to do, wanted to wear, wanted to express yourself with out in public, and then just calling a friend or taking a picture and sending it to a friend that gets it. Or you could even just do it in the house and just take a picture and send it to a friend. If you want to look at it from the inner child angle, you could dress up, not even wearing something out, but really playing dress up. You know, I'm talking about like boas and like the big pearls and really going to town. From the caregiver responsible adult angle, you could join a group. Even if you feel different, maybe even joining a group of people who are celebrating being different. And then from the rebel misfit creative kind of angle, you could create a secret club. Maybe it's a club of one, and then you invite other people later on. So how can you celebrate your individuality and also the feeling and the desire of belonging? Okay, the fourth one is order versus chaos. This is the feeling of I want structure and I also want to dissolve into the abyss. This is the tug of war between organization and magic and the struggle between like calendars and dreams, okay? So this one I'm very close to the middle on. As much as I like really probably seem like I go towards chaos, I'm much closer to the 50-50 angle on this one personally. A real life example of this that I think is really good is Albert Einstein. So he structured his life with intense focus, but his thought experiments were extremely surreal and they were very abstract. And as a result, we gained so much insight and knowledge and progressed technology so further. Like it's insane. And I think both of these things for me personally on the pendulum both come from disorder. It's funny. My desire for order comes from OCD and my desire for chaos comes from living in a chaotic home. So I'm not super sure where I would fall without either of those, but I love both. I love having an organized calendar. I love having things in order. I love the home edit and when they make things look really pretty and perfect. And I also really love everything abstract, everything surreal, everything dreamy, everything existential, everything absurd. Also just not planning something and going along with the flow and going out in the world and embracing the absurdity. And I think really at the end of it, the absurdity is where my truth lies. It's not really about chaos or order. It's really about, for me personally, it's about the absurdity. I love celebrating the absurdity. And I don't think that either of those things comes from some sort of trauma. So I think maybe what you could do to try is you could build a sacred schedule where you block out time for nonsense, the absurdity on purpose. And maybe from an inner child angle, you could make a mess without cleaning it up. And from the adult caregiver angle, you could plan tomorrow's dinner. And from the creative side, you could burn the to-do list for the day. There's so many different ways that you can kind of figure out how is it that you are looking at structure versus the chaos, or maybe you can replace chaos with absurdity or nonsense. And where are you leaning into too much? Is your life just booked every second of the day? Is your calendar just time blocked the entire time? Do you have no room for absurdity? Do you have no room for nonsense or play? We can even replace chaos with play. Is that where you're missing? Or do you feel like you have absolutely no structure and you are just floating day to day? You have no idea what day of the week it is. You are aimless and have no goals and don't know what to do with yourself. Figure out what side of the pendulum you are swinging from and then what you actually want and how to maybe move closer to the middle. Okay, the next thing is masculine versus feminine energies. So this is the feeling of I want to conquer the world and be held in soft arms. This is about energy, not gender. And I think a good real life example is Rihanna. She runs billion-dollar businesses with precision and power, but then she melts us with that sensuality and mothering. She's so interesting. And, you know, for me, I want to be thrown on the bed and I want to pay the rent. I want to work until I can't anymore, but I also want to be cared for. It's not also about like these gender roles either. Like these are just the things that I'm thinking of right now. Really, I think that masculine is about doing and feminine is about receiving. You can try alternating between noticing where you're doing things and where you're receiving things during the day. And maybe you could even have time blocks of like, these are my doing times and these are my receiving times. You can decide, I think, where creativity falls in there. Creating could fall under doing or maybe falls into receiving, depending how that feels for you. If you're creating art and you feel like you're receiving a message or a download, maybe that falls into receiving, or creating an email or something, maybe that falls under doing. I don't know, figure it out for yourself. But I think for this, it's about, do you feel like you are in charge of stuff all day? I think it's kind of like order versus chaos a little bit, but it's more about feeling like you have to run everything and not ask for help. Where are you falling on that? Creating momentum in the masculine energy and then receiving in the feminine energy. So where is it that you feel like maybe you are doing too much and not being able to ask for help? And then are you also maybe in a mode of only receiving help? Are you not offering anything to the world? Are you in a place where you are not contributing? So where are you at on that scale? I think that if you have no order, you're probably going to fall more towards the feminine side. And if you have a lot of order, you're going to fall towards the masculine side. I don't know. That's just my guess. You could try from the inner child angle, asking for help, even if you can do it yourself. From the caregiver adult side, you could try setting up a goal and following through. And from the artist rebel side, you could try wearing something fun underneath your business outfit just because. It doesn't have to be like lingerie. It could be like a clown outfit. I don't know. Okay, and then the sixth one is destiny versus free will. Is there a plan, or am I just making this up as I go? And this is the existential tension at the heart of being alive. And a real life example is Carl Jung. He was a pioneer of depth psychology who believed in both personal agency and archetypal fate. It's not really, are you planning stuff out? Are you doing it? Are you actually making a plan? It's really, are you believing that there is a plan? Destiny versus free will. Do you believe that what you're doing is up to you? Do you believe in personal agency? Do you believe that you have a contributing factor in this? Do you believe in determinism? Do you believe that everything happens for a reason and that it's kind of all made up for you? Do you rely on tarot cards to make your decisions? Do you go to a fortune teller to find out? What are you waiting on to make your decisions? Carl Jung, as an example, he believed that, we do have our own free will. We do have our own personal agency, but also that we do fall into these kind of archetypes of people. And that based on that, it's probably likely that we are going to fall into decision-based based behavior. For me, I believe in magic and I also believe in making lists. I believe in both. Let's rewind to the whole point of this episode, which is that you get to do both. So you get to practice being an individual and being a part of a group. You get to practice having chaos and having a lot of order. You get to practice the masculine energy and the feminine energy. You get to practice doing and creating. You get to practice playing with free will and playing with the idea that destiny exists. This isn't really about needing to choose. Let's remind ourselves at the end of this, like, this is not about choosing. This is just, where are you on the spectrum? So with destiny versus free will, where are you falling? You don't have to make a decision. You can believe in all the things. You can be a pantheist. It doesn't matter. You could try picking a tarot card or a rune for guidance and then saying, I don't believe in that. I'm going to do my own goal anyway. From the inner child angle, you could make a wish and then blow on dandelions. From the caregiver angle, you could reflect on your time from your hard work that paid off. And from the artist angle, you could just write your own origin myth and lore. I just want you to remember that you don't need to pick a side. You are not a thesis statement. You're a poem. You're a patchwork quilt of longings and lessons, and that is what makes you real. Contradiction isn't something that we have to solve. It's like a texture that you get to explore, a richness that you get to embody, and a signal that you are actually just paying attention. And something that I know for sure is that every time that I've thought this is the only way, I have been proven wrong. Every time that I've shamed myself into one version of who I am supposed to be, I have lost access to my magic. And when I let myself be contradictory, when I let myself wear the crown and the collar, something shifts. There's a phrase I use a lot in merriment making, which is you have to feel good to do good. But today I want to add that you have to feel whole to feel good. And that means being okay with all the wild, weird, wanting parts of you, even the ones that don't make sense on paper, especially those. And if today's episode resonated, just come say hi over on Merriment Maker on Instagram. And if you want to keep going with this work, I have some free resources inside the Positive Pulse. Well, I have a lot of free resources. We're almost at 200 in the Positive Pulse, but there's some bonuses inside of this episode as well. Or you could just start with a journaling prompt. What are the contradictions that you carry? You could write it at the top of the page and let yourself be both. Until next time, I want you to remember that you don't have to choose, you don't have to resolve, you just have to contain. You are the submissive artist, you are the sacred rebel, and the wild dreamer. You are a constellation of longing, and you are allowed to shine. I love you.